Hello students, welcome back. In this presentation, we'll look at two of the major components of networking, the internet and the World Wide Web. Let's begin with the internet. Now, what is the internet? Well, that is a question, the answer to which is not very easy to arrive at because the internet is so integrally a part of the world today. It is so all pervasive a phenomenon in the world. It is something that connects the entire world, because of which it has been called the eighth continent of the world. And for all these reasons, it is something that defies a proper definition. One can only say that the internet is a big network. It can be considered as a network of networks, a global computer network that provides a variety of information and facilities for communication, and something that is consists of interconnected networks that use standardized communication protocols. So all these points would be essential parts of the definition of the internet. Living as we do in the most challenging of times with the COVID threat, we realize as never before the importance of the internet. If it were not for this network covering the entire world, we would just not be able to come this far. The internet has ensured global communication at this very crucial point of time, helped in collecting and analyzing data related to everything connected to the pandemic. So the internet provides a capability that is so powerful and so general that it can be used for almost any purpose, and it is accessible by every individual who is connected to any one of its constituent networks. So it is something that has brought the world together. No wonder the government of Kerala has declared it as the internet as a basic right. It supports communication via social media, via electronic mail, via chat rooms, news groups, audio and video transmission, and it allows people to work together, to work in a collaborative manner at various locations spread across the world. And it supports access to digital information by many applications, including the World Wide Web. So there is no aspect of life today, health, business, trade, communication, everything is connected by the internet. Let's take a look at the history, the growth and evolution of the internet. And when we trace its roots, we go all the way back to the 1950s and 1960s in the United States. That's where we have some of the earliest models of the first computer networks. One can think of network systems like the Sabre, SABRE. It was an airline reservation system that was developed in America, and Autodin, a defense command and control system. So these were designed and implemented sometime during the late 1950s and early 1960s. And by the 1960s, actually, you have the development of semiconductor technology being used, and this being used by computer manufacturers in a big way, and adding time sharing systems to it uh, in such a way that the resources of a computer could be shared in very quick succession by multiple users, and it was done so quickly that it appeared as if the computer was dedicated to each user's needs, in spite of the fact that many were actually simultaneously accessing the system. So the notion of sharing computer resources became a norm. Now these computer resources are called host computers, or simply hosts. So host to host interactions were envisioned very soon, and um, you also have the development of supercomputers and mass storage systems by the late 1960s and 70s. And all of these led, I think, or one can see the first major integration of all these facilities, all these technologies in what is known as the ARPANET, ARPANET. It was a project of the United States Department of Defense. The full form or the expansion of ARPANET is Advanced Research Projects Agency. It was a host to host network connection which became operational in the month of October in 1969. It was the first general purpose computer network, and it connected time sharing computers at government supported research sites, mainly in the important universities in the United States. So it was for the purpose of communicating important pieces of information to aid defense systems that the ARPANET came into existence. And it soon became an important system, an infrastructure for computer science research across the United States. And very soon you have the development of various tools and applications, like, for instance, the simple mail transfer protocol, what is known as the SMTP, which is what is used in emails. And then you have the protocol developed for transfer of files, known as the File Transfer Protocol, FTP, for longer transmissions. So, in order to achieve a very effective, cost effective, interactive communications between computers, ARPANET employed a new technology known as packet switching. Now, what packet switching does, it takes large messages, huge chunks of computer data, and breaks them into smaller, manageable pieces. And these pieces are known as the packets. These could travel independently over any available system to other destinations where the pieces would be reassembled. So, unlike traditional voice communications, packet switching did not require a single dedicated circuit between each pair of users. So, this was the earliest major step in the development of the internet. So, the packet switch technology became immensely popular, and very soon you have the effort on the part of various research networks and institutions in the United States to get connected with their counterparts in Europe. So, they launched a program to connect these heterogeneous networks together, and this program was what was called interneting. So that was the first step in the development of what we today know as the internet, of course, after the ARPANET. So the interneting was based on a newly introduced concept of open architecture networking, where uh, networks with clearly defined standard interfaces would be interconnected by gateways. Very soon, the Transmission Control Protocol (TCP) was developed, and that enabled different types of machines on networks, not just in America and Europe, but all over the world, to route and assemble data packets. And the US Department of Defense integrated the TCP IP together, the Transmission Control Protocol and the Internet Protocol. They The integrated system was adopted by the US Department of Defense in 1980. And in no time at all, by the by the 1980s, during the remaining years of that decade, this open architecture of the TCP/IP approach, Transmission Control Protocol, combined with the Internet Protocol approach, was adopted and uh, endorsed by various other institutions uh, across the world. Today, the internet has grown and grown, and it is now um, controlled by a loosely structured group of many, several thousand interested individuals. Together, they are known as the Internet Engineering Task Force. They participate in the development of internet standards for the whole world. And these are maintained by this non-profit Internet Society, which is an international body headquartered at Virginia in the United States. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. That is another important organization, again a non-profit private organization, which oversees the various aspects of policy regarding internet domain names, numbers, and so on. The integration of the World Wide Web, which is a network of websites, to the internet in the year 1992 was a major step in the further expansion of the internet. The World Wide Web it did not use the earlier text-based method to create and access documents. Instead, it used a graphical hypertext method, and this made communication and transfer of data much easier. And to aid this in a major way, the HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, was developed. And in the year 1993, you have another major step with the introduction of the browser. It was developed in the University of Illinois, and the first browser was called Mosaic. Of course, this was later followed by browsers like the Internet Explorer and others. And with that, you have the rapid development of the ISPs, the Internet Service Providers, throughout the 1990s. And then you have the introduction of mobile phones on a massive scale, again leading to greater expansion of the internet. And by the first decade of the new millennium in the 2000s, you have social networking and cloud computing entering in a big way and further expanding the internet. And today, the explosive dissemination of digitized text, pictures, audio, video recordings over the internet, these are made available by the World Wide Web, and it has resulted in an explosion, an information explosion. And today, during the days of the pandemic, during the days of the lockdown, we know how much the internet is used for every kind of networking. You have so many platforms that enable virtual meetings when people are expected to remain in lockdown and expected to maintain so safe social distancing, then the internet has again come to our rescue and facilitated virtual meetings for every purpose. Let us now move on to the World Wide Web. It's important to distinguish between the internet and the World Wide Web. The internet is a huge network of networks, and the World Wide Web is a collection of web pages. The World Wide Web is a part of the internet, or it is integrated, it is connected to the internet. The internet is a much larger entity, and the World Wide Web is a part of it. So it's a collection of web pages. The World Wide Web is a powerful global information system. It is a retrieval program that aims to give universal access to a large number of documents or web pages. So, the World Wide Web is an internet based service, and it uses protocols which are nothing but a common set of rules. And using these protocols, it distributes documents or web pages across the internet in a standardized manner. And we can view the contents of the web, the World Wide Web, through the use of browser softwares like Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, and so on. Using these browsers, one can access the entire lot of digital information which is stored in the internet, which is there as part of the internet, and we can access it by getting connected to the computers around the world or the web servers. And this is made possible on the web, World Wide Web, through the use of hypertext or hypermedia links or hyperlinks. Now, these links are electronic connections that can enable us to link related pieces of information so that we can access them easily. The World Wide Web is growing by the minute. It is said that every hour there are at least 1,000 web pages or websites which are added to the World Wide Web. It is important to know something about the history, the growth and development of the World Wide Web. It was actually a project that was begun in the 1980s at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, situated in Geneva in Switzerland. And it was headed by Tim Berners-Lee, who is today considered as the father of the World Wide Web. Now, this project of the organization called CERN was intended to make academic information freely available to everyone. It wanted to allow information sharing across the globe. It was originally intended only for the high energy physics community, but then because of its efficiency and because of the immense goodness that it provided, it soon spread to other areas, and soon there was a great deal of pooling of resources and collaborative work connected to the World Wide Web. Now, this team, headed by Tim Berners-Lee, created the HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And this protocol or this set of rules was what standardized communication between the servers and the clients. That is, those who provide the information and those who seek the information. And this their text-based web browser was made available for the general public in January 1992. And from that point of time onwards, the world of information or the world of information technology has never been the same. The World Wide Web consists of a large number of documents or web pages, and we get access to these web pages with the help of links or hyperlinks. So, what we do when we try to get access to the World Wide Web or the information in the World Wide Web is use a search engine. It is a program that enables us to search for web pages that contain the information we need. So we type in a word in the search engine, and the search engine, with the help of the internet browser, which is another program, will search through the entire body of documents on the World Wide Web and filter out those sites which we need, those web pages which contain the information that we sought by typing in the keyword. So what we get as a result of the search will be an index, a list of documents that contain the information that we need. And to get to these documents, we have the links, the hyperlinks, which are also provided in that index or the list provided to us by the search engine. At the outset, therefore, it's very important to distinguish between the web browser and the search engine. Very often these are mistaken for each other, and we need to have a clear idea about their specific functions. A web browser is an application software, and it retrieves information from web pages which are present on the web servers. The first of these browsers was developed by Tim Berners-Lee in 1990, and the very first graphical web browser, Mosaic, was developed in the early 1990s. The commonest web browsers are the Internet Explorer, the Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, Apple Safari, and so on. The web browser consists of a graphical user interface, and a web browser will have a search box where we can type the address or the uniform resource locator. The page can be either static or dynamic, and HTTP protocols are used by web browsers. Search engines, on the other hand, are programs which are needed to extract the information from the internet. The common examples of search engines are Yahoo, Bing, Google, Ask, AOL, and Baidu. Now, these work in two stages. When we enter a search word in the search the search engine initially does the work of a spider. It crawls through the entire list of World Wide Web pages or the web pages and provides and gets a list out for us. It spots those sites which will have the information that we require, and then it indexes it for us. In other words, provides it to us in the form of a list in a manner where the number one entry on that list will contain the maximum information about the search word that we had entered. So, crawling and indexing. This is how a search engine works. The differences between a search engine and a browser are listed in this slide. Some of the key terms that we need to be familiar with when we discuss the World Wide Web are the HTML, the Hypertext Markup Language. The HTML is the format that is used by the web pages. That is, it is a publishing format where you have the documents which contain not just text, graphics, and other information, but also the links with which you can get connected to other documents and resources. So it is a special kind of language, a hypertext markup language. Then you have the URL, the Uniform Resource Locator. It is a kind of address that is unique to every web page. Each web page will have a uniform resource locator. It can be called as the address of a web page, and it is by, the search engine gives us a list of these URLs. What is known as, we normally see it when we search for something, you get the list of the web pages, www dot, and then you have the HTTP and the address of that web page. So that is what is called the Uniform Resource Locator. It is called the Uniform Resource Locator because it is this address that is used everywhere. Whether you are in India or the United States, you use the same, or the address of each web page remains the same. It does not change from one language to the other. It is uniform. Then you have the HTTP, which we have already discussed, which allows HTML, Hypertext Markup Language documents, to be transmitted between browsers. So it is this protocol that is used so that we can get connected from one web page to another on the internet. Now, the web server is nothing but a system or a computer where files are stored and which can be accessed over the internet using the hypertext transfer protocol.